Hello everybody, welcome to episode 13 of Shonen Shorts, where today we'll be going over the April 26th issue of Weekly Shonen Jump. Now this week I ended up reading Under Doctor, Alien Headbutt, and Class 2B Hero Destroyers. So to start off with Under Doctor, this week we saw as the conclusion, the conclusion of the Maxell and Haji fight happened last week, but this week we see as they're kind of still in the aftermath, and Maxell tries to get back up to try and fight Haji some more, but he ultimately ends up almost falling off the building. However, Haji's able to grab him, and then he's like, no, just let me go, maybe this 30-foot drop will kill me. Not 30 foot, but 30 floor drop will kill me. And he tries to let go, but Haji ends up throwing him over and falling himself. And he kind of has some flashbacks and stuff, and he's kind of reminiscing about how he's not really ready to die yet because he has so much to do. And he has a flashback to a childhood friend who comments on how his eyes don't make him a monster. Because we see as Haji was kind of discussing in his mind how when he thought about the reason he was born and why he had his eyes, that he kind of wanted to die because he was presumed himself to be a monster. But this character did not see him as one. So we're possibly may get a Haji flashback sometime soon. As he fallen, ultimately Maxell ends up saving him, and then they have a brief discussion where you get to see as we get to learn a little bit more about Maxell's backstory. We learned that as a very young child he was tested on, and this was after he survived like a traumatic car accident, and they realized that he was almost essentially indestructible, so they started testing on, they hit him with cars and all of that, but ultimately he was able to escape and he started killing people. And then he ultimately met up with Haji at one point, and then Haji told him to live for someone to solve this problem that he had, and then he ultimately ended up getting 3 wives. But yeah, so we see this, and we see as Maxell and Haji are kind of just conversing, and Haji's kind of revealing to Maxell that he's not alone in his pain, that everyone suffers immense pain, and that they just have to learn to deal with it and do with the best that they have, which ultimately ends up changing Maxell's mind. He realizes that he no longer wants to die, and he wants to live for a reason other than killing people. So he ends up calling his 3 wives, and he gets real emotional and all of that. And we see as he actually begins to cry at the end of the chapter. But yeah, so, and Haji says he's got to go back to surgery. But then we see in Alien Headbutt, I believe it was chapter 12 or 13 this week. But yeah, so we see in Alien Headbutt, we start off at the Mukurojima Soldier Factory. And we are introduced to the woman character last chapter, but her name is Saito, which we learn now. And she takes him to Needle Boy, which is the Needle alien's name. And Needle Boy reveals to Uga that that they are in the Soldier Factory to produce soldiers through the usage of Gilbil. Now, Gilbil is a little parasite that's in Uga and Tatsumi now. But Needle Boy reveals to Uga that the Gilbil is actually like a doping parasite, and it often causes people to lose their mind in sacrifice for immense strength. And he kind of comments on how Uga may have killed Tatsumi and made him go insane and kill Yuki and Haruya because he gave him the parasite and he might lose his mind. Yeah, so we see this, and we see that they're testing a bunch of animals. We see that the humans that they tested on have predominantly been unsuccessful. And ultimately, Needle Boy's like, yo, I'm going to need a test on you, Uga. And Uga's like, no, we're going to try and escape. He tries to fight Needle Boy, but then they have a bunch of other aliens, digger aliens. They're the ones who dug the holes. But they see them as they all come down and defend Needle Boy. And he's like, yeah, did you not think there wouldn't be security measures here? And he also reveals how if he ends up getting killed, then they'll kill all the humans as well. Oh, if Needle Boy ends up getting killed, then they'll kill all the humans as well. So Uga cannot escape from this at the moment. So we see as he's ultimately tested on, and Needle Boy's working on him and all that, saw him up, crap like that. And then we end up seeing as Uga wakes up and he's talking with Saito, and Saito has to reveal something to him. So Saito reveals that she's a big fan of his, and everyone in the factory is a big fan of his. So they end up taking him along. And ultimately, this girl who has ram horns ends up bashing into him. And he's like, yo, what the heck's going on? Stop her. And then ultimately, he gets a look at her. He's like, oh, is that little May? Which is the little goat that the family had as a pet. So here at the factory, the aliens had been forcing evolution onto organisms. And this turned little May into a human. And an advanced human. She can speak and do all that stuff. But yeah, so Saito gets to talking with him, and she reveals how Little May and her have been planning an escape route for this, for as long as they've been here, or at least as long as May has been evolved to this level. And they just kind of discuss and reveal to Uga that they do have a escape plan, and that they will be executing it sometime soon, and that he needs to prepare for all of this. But yeah, then we go on to Class 2B Hero Destroyers. Now, this chapter, it was kind of very similar to the first one. We see in the intro how there's this seer in the demon realm that is trying to accrue heroes to send them through the portal in the demon realm to fight and hunt down Valeris, since she is the heir to the demon realm, and the hero just conquered it. But we see this, then we get some more just information about how Valeris is going to be looked down on in school and all that because she's kind of weird. But then we get to see some more about Akira Kuman, and we learn his kind of backstory. about how as a young kid he had very bad bowel issues, and there was this other kid who had them as well. They would talk in the staff bathroom across the stall, and ultimately they agreed one day to go have a study session outside of it, but they never ended up meeting up, and this led to Akira kind of hiding himself in the stalls and secluding himself away from society, which ultimately led to his outbreak of Demon King Commode, when he was being bullied by some kids, and in the 4th grade he became this jacked, tall, mullet-having, goatee-wearing entity, I guess, like a grown man, essentially. And we see this kind of goes about all of that, and we see that Akira decided to stop his persona as Demon King Commode to focus more on himself and, I guess, conquer the bathroom, which had so long held him in captivity, essentially. And he's doing this to hopefully one day be able to meet that other kid in a study session. But yeah, so we see this, and then we see as he dashes off to the bathroom. Once he gets to the bathroom, we see as Durgo ends up commenting on how there's a presence somewhere, and we see as demons are spawning in from, or like entities are spawning in from the bathroom. But yeah, honestly, I'm not big on like the toilet humor of this. I not really like it. I don't get me wrong. I love my immature humor. I laugh at a bunch of stuff, but it's just not really up my alley. And I hope the premise kind of like gets along, because I don't want it to just be a comedy manga, because it does have a really high possibility of being good, I think, if they focus more on the demon realm stuff. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. So like I said, I'm gonna give it the 5-chapter treatment, but at the moment, it's not looking good. But it's okay. It's got a good premise. Like I said, it has the potential to be really good. But yeah, that's all I really have for episode 13 of Shonen Shorts. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah.